that is inhibited because of the tense relations, either generally or because of the announcement? And then I have one more.
I'm not really sure how to answer your question, Pam. I mean, we continue to work daily with the Israeli authorities. Are those relations bright and sunny? I think you can draw your own conclusion from it. I mean, we keep trying to hash out different problems having to do with humanitarian access and others. The issues of visas, right? We've been very clear about the issues of visas. Notably, if you'll recall, Philippe Lazzarini, who heads UNRWA, no longer has a visa to go to Israel and has not been cleared by the Israeli authorities to go to Gaza. Despite all of that, we continue to do our work to the best of our ability.
I'm sorry, the second part of the question is just, has there been any direct attempt or indirect attempt by you, by the Israeli ambassador here, we know the SG hasn't spoken to the Prime Minister, but have there been any attempts to better the relationship?
We keep at it, right? I mean, Sigrid Kaag has met, I think, at least twice with Prime Minister Netanyahu. Tor Venesland has also met with senior Israeli officials. I mean, we continue to do our work. Fethi, then Benny.
Thank you, Steph. Still on the same subject. What's the situation now for the safety and security of the UN personnel on the ground, whether international staff or local staff, in the light of this unprecedented decision to consider the United Nations Secretary General a persona non grata? Okay. And second, does the SG consider this as a precursor for an imminent all-out war in the Middle East?
Does he consider, is he relating the announcement by the Israeli foreign minister to a precursor of all-out war?
I mean, the decision
I think that's an analysis
alienating the UN.
That's an analysis. I will leave to you. I think there are other facts on the ground which are extremely concerning to the Secretary General and to the international community about the risk of an all-out conflagration. So that's that. I have no doubt that the Israeli government continues to take its responsibilities that any country has that hosts UN staff to ensure the safety of UN personnel serving in their territory and territories over which they have responsibility. We had seen in the past, not too long ago, some incitements from some quarters, which notably led to attacks on UNRWA offices in East Jerusalem, which could have been very scary, but thank God, no real damage. Benny, and then Abdel Hamid.
Two questions unrelated. The first one has to do with the leap of faith. Why should something...
Sorry, put a little closer.
The first one has to do with the leap of faith. Why should something...
Leap of faith.
Of faith. Why should something unsaid should be obvious?
Well, it was obvious to us. Maybe it wasn't obvious to others. I think the clarity of the Secretary General's message was made clear to those who read and listened to him today.
But you agree that it was unsaid on Tuesday
night?
I think
I will not say more than the Secretary General said today, because I think that was clear, and I think if I add to it, it may make things less clear.
Okay, so second question has to do, we've been talking a lot about 1701 in the last few days. I have a question about 1559, which basically calls for disarming of all militias in Lebanon.
Closer.
Right?
Yeah, I just want everybody else to hear you, not just me.
Please, they don't really want to hear. Anyway, yeah. I want to ask about, rather than 1701, I want to ask about 1559, which called for mandated the disarmament of all militias in Lebanon. that clearly hasn't happened since 1559, since 1701, and clearly the Hezbollah is much more powerful than the Lebanese army that is supposed to disarm it, and it's represented in the government that controls that army. So the question is, why would anyone look at 1701 as a model that should be followed?
Well, it's not so much a model that should be followed, it's a mandate from the Security Council that should be followed. And I think the parties are listed in those resolutions, know what they have to do. The fact that it hasn't progressed in the right direction is clear to you, and it's clear to me, and it's clear to others and to the Secretary General, who, as I said, observed and wondering aloud what remains of that framework.
So when you say the parties know what they have to do you include in that Israel's disarming of Hezbollah as dictated by 1701 and 1559?
It is about the return of the authority of the state of Lebanon to areas south of the Litani, and the rest of the resolution, I think, is in black and white.
No, I'm talking about 1559, which is not talk about the Litani. It talks about the disarming of all militias, armed militias in Lebanon.
That should be done by the state. Abdelhamid.
Thank you, Stéphane. I have also a few questions. Could you explain what happened to this Russian journalist that his credentials was convoked? I'm sorry if you explained it before.
I didn't explain it to you because I was just made aware of this literally less than 20 minutes ago. I think the issue is being dealt with between the Russian Federation and our colleagues in the Department of Global Communications.
Okay. Second question. In the last 24 hours, there were 5 massacres committed in Gaza. 51 was killed, 165 wounded. I ask many times that the killing of Palestinians becoming no news in the noon briefing. How could these?
I don't think it's no news. We remain in Gaza. We remain side by side with civilians. As you know, our own staff, which is majority of Palestinians themselves, have suffered alongside the civilians, and we continue to condemn any and all killing of civilians. Your next question.
So some of them were killed in UN schools, in shelters.
And we have spoken about that. Yes, sir. Your next question.
My next question about the right of self-defense. Many of the Western countries spoke in the Security Council, spoke about the right of Israel to defend itself, especially the US. They repeated that 3 times. Now, does Iran have the same right? Was it attacked or not by Israel? Was its sovereignty was violated or not by Israel?
Your next question.
My next question about the right of self-defense. All other countries. Many of the Western countries spoke in the Security Council, spoke about the right of Israel to defend itself, especially the US. They repeated that 3 times.
It will not come as a surprise to you, and this may be an honest assessment, but that different member states interpret international law differently. Sonia. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry. I'm sorry.
No problem. Sorry. The Secretary General has made clear that his only power is his voice, and he has elevated this week 3 times. I wonder, has he used it privately to lead any diplomatic efforts to stop what is unraveling?
I mean, the messages that he gives publicly are the same ones that he gives privately, and that his representatives on the ground, whether it's Tor Venesland, whether it's Janine Hennis-Plasschaert in Lebanon, all give. And they're continuing their intense contacts with all the parties involved. Stefano.
Thank you, Stéphane. About the situation in UNIFIL, we heard what Secretary General said at the Security Council, that they will stay, and what you just said about the flag still there. But they arrive there as a peacekeepers. If there is not any at all any more peace there, what are what they doing there? Because usually we learn that the UN will never send peacekeepers when there is a fight going on. They have to wait for peace, and then they keep the peace. In this case, the peace is not there anymore.
I think you're making an observation which I will not question. What I can tell you is that the peacekeepers, the UN Blue Helmets, UNIFIL, more than 9,000 of them have a very clear mandate from the Security Council on behalf of the international community. They continue to implement it to the best of their ability. They continue to be we believe, a force of deterrence, and they also provide a critical, I would say, communications framework where our UNIFIL commander speaks both to the Lebanese armed forces and to the Israeli defense forces. Obviously, they're also reporting on what is going on. We spoke to one of my colleagues there a few hours ago. He said there continues to be intense shelling, but they are constantly adjusting their operational posture to ensure their own safety, while at the same time implementing their mandate. And I said it yesterday, but it needs to be said again, because the message from the troop contributing countries has been very clear, is that they're sticking with this mission, and we are extremely appreciative of the fact that they are sticking with this mission.
Just a quick follow-up. The troop they're contributing, someone has been suggesting that the rules of engagement of the UNIFIL should be, enlarged. Should be made, changed by the Security Council.
In what way?
There is some proposal that the actual rule of engagement of those soldiers that are there, I don't know, maybe
but in
the
way
can defend themselves if they somebody start to shoot at them.
Peacekeepers are always allowed to defend themselves. Obviously, if the rules of engagements change, then they will change. Senor.
Steph, again on the persona non grata declaration, you said there were no legal effects, but the fact is that the Israeli foreign minister, he banned Mr. Guterres from entering the country. So there are some legal effects.
Well, listen, we're not looking at it through a legal lens for a number of reasons, including the one I gave you. And let's be honest, what is clear that any Secretary General, whenever he so far just he, goes to a country, it is at the invitation of that country. So that's just a basic principle. So you can do the math on how we see this. Yes, go ahead.
Follow up. At the same time, last week, Mr. Netanyahu came to New York, and he brought with him 40, 50 people inside the General Assembly, right? So there is no correspondence between the UN behavior and Israel behavior.
I didn't hear a question mark there. Before we go back to, is there any questions on the screen? Because I don't have my phone. Yes, Mike.
Firstly, Steph, you are forever persona grata at Shea Wagenheim. Anytime. You went out of
Thank you.
Two questions for you. Please indulge me. When the Secretary General says the UNIFIL flag or the UN flag still flies, does he mean that there's just an outright refusal to move the peacekeepers, or not in this particular situation, or what exactly does that mean?
It means exactly what it means, is that the IDF had requested UNIFIL to leave several positions near the blue line, saying it was in the interest of the peacekeepers' safety and security. A decision was made, both, I would say, operationally and politically, to stay. We will continue to stay, while at the same time assessing our posture and the security of peacekeepers, I would say, on an hourly basis.
Second question for you. In terms of the framework of 1701, I mean, the state of Lebanon has had 18 years to implement that resolution. I mean, you and Jean-Pierre Lacroix kind of said the same thing, that it's up to the parties. Well, if the Lebanese government won't do it, and Hezbollah is obviously in no rush or has no motive to implement it, I mean, what's the other party left to implement?
Look, diplomacy takes time. We want to see the guns silenced, and we want to see a return to diplomacy.
Last question. Can
yes,
I get
sir.
one more?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. I don't want to make unclear what you said was made clear this morning, but just in a general sense. I mean, if I woke up from a midday nap yesterday and read the Secretary General's statement, I would have no idea that Iran fired 180 ballistic missiles. And when you go back to what started this whole brouhaha between Israel and Secretary General back in October, when he said there's no justification for the massacre, and 5 seconds later went into a 5-minute justification for it, or at least interpreted that way by many. My wife often tells me, if you're clear the first time, you won't have to clear it up later. I mean, is there an issue with the Secretary General and just hesitancy or dancing around politically and trying to be clear the first time rather than just in identifying the problem?
Well, perhaps we can invite your wife to ask the questions and my wife to answer them. But listen, I think in your preamble, you said you did not want to make less clear what the Secretary General said. I think the Secretary General was clear, and the tweet was released within the context of what everybody knew and what the news was. But I think his comments today were very clear. Sylvia.
The Lebanese government said today and yesterday they will implement Resolution 1701. Did you get the message? How about UNIFIL now? Is he continuing the mandate? Will continue?
Yeah, I mean, UNIFIL
is it going to change within this 1701 resolution?
We would love to see the parties actually implement 1701. The UNIFIL's mandate has not changed to the best of my knowledge, given that it's a Security Council that would change it. So their work continues under the present circumstances.
The same rule of engagement?
The rules of engagement are set out, unless the Security Council decides to change something. Benno.
Thank you. I have a follow-up to the incident at the press conference with German Foreign Minister Baerbock. I know you just heard about it 20 now, maybe 30 minutes ago, but still.
It seems like an hour ago now.
Oh, yeah. Can you confirm, though, that this Russian journalist was stripped his UN badge?
I don't believe he was stripped of his UN badge. I believe his status was changed. But again, that's just what I know in the last 24 minutes.
When you say his status was
Well, because
changed.
you have different access to this building. You have resident correspondents, non-resident correspondents.
So he still has access to the building, you think?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
But